You're listening to Telecast PH. Identifying the right time and then preparing to scale your support function isn't always as easy as just hiring more people to handle the increased volume. There are many factors to consider before bringing in new people, but even before that, how do you know when the time is right to scale or that time is even coming? Well, you'll find out right after this. Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of Telecast PH as we continue on with our series about scaling and managing SaaS support teams. I'm Jeff Thompson, your host, Director of Client Solutions here at Telework PH, and the voice of offshore outsourcing. Thank you so much for joining. Now, so far in this series, we've been talking about scaling and managing support teams, and we've had some great guests with some great topics, and I've got even more lined up over the next few weeks. But one topic we haven't covered yet is how to identify when it's time to scale your support function and how to prepare and execute all while keeping your customers happy and at the same level that they're used to. Until now. Now, I had a great conversation with Bettina Abbott, and she shared her insights having had that very experience and was successful making it happen. We discussed topics like identifying when it's time to scale and not scaling retroactively after there's already a bottleneck. We also talk about what training materials to prepare and how to build the right team to make sure your old customers and new customers are getting the same level of care and satisfaction. It was a fun and intriguing conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you. But before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this podcast, Telework PH, a premier and award-winning BPO here in the Philippines. Telework PH, we build your team, you get the benefit. To find out more about how we can help transform or build your support team, or if you're looking for a highly skilled virtual assistant or team of virtual assistants in any area of your business, all you got to do is hop on over to www.teleworkph.com or hit me up on LinkedIn. Just search Jeff Thompson, Director of Client Solutions here at Telework PH, and the voice of offshore outsourcing. All right, now let's get into that conversation with Bettina. Hello all, and welcome back. And today we are honored to have Bettina Abbott with us, support leader from Creo Clinical Research IO, and we're discussing how to identify when it's time to scale up the support team and the best way to execute it. Bettina, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. Do you want to go ahead and just jump in and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role and your experiences?
Yes, sure, definitely. As you know, as you just said, my name is Bettina Abbott. I am the Director of Support here at Creo. I have over 2 decades of experience in support, and that's whether the support is for an internal client or external client role. In my role here at Creo, it's been one of the most interesting and satisfying roles that I've had because I was tasked with and still am tasked with formally building out the department, which is why this actually is right on time, this podcast.
So it's a topic that you're familiar with right now.
Very much so, yes. Very intimate with at the moment.
Excellent. So as you were building out, or you started to build this out, what do you think was the first priority when preparing the support team to scale, and why was it critical?
For our team, basically, one of the most important things that I needed to do first was standardize the training for new agents, like build a solid foundation of knowledge and processes for the department as a whole. So I created new coursework, process documentation, an internal repository for support-specific information that agents could refer back to when needed. This was critical for a few reasons. One was, of course, it allows new agents to ramp up faster, right? Because there's a consistent knowledge across the board that they are learning from. Everybody's learning the same thing, getting the same information. This helps, of course, with quality, right? Because we want to make sure that we're maintaining a certain level of quality for our clients. And then another part of it really too is it allows for us to create this measurable standard, right? Because you want that when you're
Right.
ramping up a department. That way you can say, okay, I see this agent is doing extremely well. Or I can tell this agent is struggling in this area. We might need more training or not even more training for them. Or it might be a matter of we need to just change our own training and how we go about it. Or even, okay, I can see this person may not be a good fit for this role, right? Because that's something you want to learn as quickly and early as possible.
Yes.
So the training really was the most important thing to really build out and stabilize while getting the department up.
And that makes perfect sense, because if you're going to be onboarding new agents, you're scaling up, you definitely want to have that documentation, those SOPs and the training practices in place beforehand. That
Exactly.
way you can gauge, especially if you're bringing on, say, 5 agents,
Mm-hmm.
that's a mess to try to gauge each one's progress without having something to compare it to. Like,
Exactly.
why is this person progressing and this one is not? Well, let's take a look at our SOPs. Let's take a look at our training manuals to see where the gaps are, because obviously if 4 people are getting it now and one person is struggling, well, then it's probably not the processes. It's
Right.
probably that agent that's going to need a little bit of extra help. But if we back it up just a little bit, how do you identify in your experience or in your opinion when it's
Mhm.
time to expand the support team, and what indicators do you look for?
Let's start with a moment of transparency or a moment of honesty, right? Because for a number of companies, when it comes to an actual support department, they kind of like fall behind when it comes to expansion of that actual department, right? So they don't really anticipate the need and hire in advance. Oftentimes with support departments, they're falling behind in hiring when things are already kind of overwhelming for the existing agents, right? Thankfully at Creo, while we are growing, we understand our growth. So we really are working towards anticipating what our future needs are going to be and building out those metrics. That's actually something we are still really starting to build out as a measurable, right? So, for example, right now we're considering using a forecasting or trend line models, and we're building forecasting models off of those trend lines, right?
Mhm.
That was something that we recently implemented just to see how accurate it would be for the next 12 months so we can plan accordingly. So, based off of those numbers, we can say, hey, it looks like in Q2 of 2025, we're going to need to budget for 1 or 2 more agents, right? But then also, too, unexpected things happen. So, again, it is support. Sometimes things can change rapidly that you can't forecast for. So in those instances, we're looking at existing KPIs, like for example, chats per agent per hour. And then
Mhm.
that could be like more of a live indicator that if we're consistently seeing high numbers for that, then we can say, okay, it's definitely time for us to bring on another agent. So for us, we're trying to measure future forecasting as well as looking at current KPIs, just to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on to know if we need new agents or not.
Excellent. And you're absolutely correct. A lot of businesses scale support retroactively. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's already blown up. It's already going to, excuse my language, it's already going to hell. you know,
Right.
and then their solution to that is to just throw more people at it.
Right.
And then what happens is that's even a larger issue, because it takes the resources away, from the queue to
Mm-hmm.
to train and bring the people up to speed, and they never really get the proper training, which isn't setting them up for success, you
Exactly.
know in
Yes.
the long run. So I want to point back then to an article that you wrote, and this is back in December 15, 2023, but it's still relevant today. And I think a lot of the points that you just came up with come from that article. Key considerations often overlooked when building a robust customer support department. Everybody check this out on Bettina Abbott's LinkedIn. I'll put her link to her LinkedIn in the description for the podcast. But here you talk about just those things: the scalability, planning, and the cross-departmental collaboration. because
Yes.
without that cross-departmental collaboration, it's very, very difficult to project. If you don't know what sales is doing, if you don't know what
Right.
the exec team is planning for growth next year, then you have no idea what to expect when it comes to your support team. You don't know what's, are we launching a new product? Are we, are we expanding into a new area? Just as examples, so having that collaboration and that planning ahead of time, like you said, oh, in
Mhm.
Q2 2025, we just may need to bring on two more agents. So,
Yeah.
that's an indicator that it's time for us to start scaling.
Well, that's another thing too, is huge. That sales and support really should go hand in hand when it comes to planning, right? So if you
Mhm.
know that you plan to hire three new business development representatives or salespeople, then you also should be keeping in your mind that you're going to have to hire more support, right? So they should be going hand
Absolutely.
in hand at all times.
So when you are hiring,
Mhm.
okay, how do you approach hiring for a scaling team to ensure that you're still bringing on the right talent quickly without compromising quality?
So for us, we might operate a little bit differently, right? For us in support is an extremely important role. It's not like that bottom of the totem pole type role, which is kind of how it comes across in a number of companies, right? For us, it's not that. It's an extremely important role. So we do have multiple rounds of interviews. In those interviews, we're not just taking into account like your skill set, we're taking into account your like, do you come across as a good fit for the company culture? Do you come across as someone who self-motivates and who is excited and positive? Like we're looking at a number of things when we're looking to bring on new people. So with those interviews, it also includes a number of different team members and leaders. And we're actually even filling out questionnaires with grading scales. So for us, like the process sometimes can be quick, but we're not willing to sacrifice quality at any point in time. So no matter if it does end up taking time, that we're okay with that because we're not going to sacrifice quality. We want to make sure we're finding the right fit. And I think really that's the biggest thing when it comes to support. Don't treat it as like the bottom of the totem pole role in the company and don't sacrifice the quality just to have somebody sitting in a seat, right? Approach it as the serious role that it is because this person is like a representative of
Right.
your company that's going to be speaking to clients every single day.
And all of those clients, each one that they speak to has a different personality, has a
Yep,
different mood, a different, threshold of frustration.
exactly.
So those hiring processes are extremely important because, anybody can look good on paper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And they can come in and they look great, but are they a good fit for the culture? Are they a good
Right.
fit for there's nothing wrong with them, but it just might be that this person is an exceptional agent, but just not for this company.
Right.
They
Exactly.
just might not click with our customer base, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we of course we do a lot of hiring. It's our it's the backbone of our business,
Right.
as a BPO in the Philippines. So we do put a lot into, our recruitment as well, especially, when we're matching, cultures.
Mm-hmm.
For us, we have to do a double, they have to be a match for our culture, at
Right.
Telework PH, as well as the culture of the client. So there is the process is lengthy, but it's been streamlined. You know what I'm saying? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
certain that that's something, you're also along those lines where it's
Yes.
it's complex, but it's been streamlined, and by now what you're looking for out of
Right.
every agent as you're scaling up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So earlier you had mentioned, we talked about training, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to know what training strategies in your experience work best for onboarding large number of new support agents without losing focus on quality and the consistency. Now I know we talked about SOPs and documentation. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
So That actually is part of the reason why when preparing to scale a support team, one of the first things that I focused on was building out the solid training plan, right? Just because this way, no matter how many people you're training, whether it's 1, 10, or 20, that foundation is there and it's built out in a way where everyone potentially can be successful. For our training agents, they when they're coming on, they often have that customer support part down, right? But now they have to learn our platform. They have to
Mhm.
learn the basics of clinical research if they don't have like that background in the medical field or in the clinical research field. So that's still a lot of information that they have to learn in order to be successful with Creo. So for us, we find one of the most important things that we needed to add to our training was repetition of information.
Mhm.
So basically, new agents, they learn the same topic multiple times in different ways, right? So this is just to make sure that it's sticking or is being shared in a way that they will understand because you can say something one way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get it if they hear it that way, right? It might take somebody else coming in saying it, saying the same thing, but in a different way that makes
Right.
that information stick. So for us, we have self-paced training on a topic. And then from that self-paced training, we also have live trainings on the topic at least twice from 2 different people. So that means you're getting the same information at least 3 times, right? And this is again to make sure that the information stick and it allows you to get it from different perspectives, which can help you not only better understand, but retain it. And we do it that way because we know we have a lot of information to share for you to understand. For simpler support teams that might not be as important, right? But for us, we're in a highly regulated industry with a lot of
Right.
regulations, a lot of information. Our platform is extensive. For us, it was extremely important to make sure we added those extra layers of information, like that repetition for information, just to make sure we're giving you the best chance possible to learn everything you need to learn.
So that's the first time, and as long as I've been doing it, that I've heard that approach, and that is an excellent approach. The repetition in different ways. I was just having a conversation the other night with another guest, and we were discussing something along the same lines as
Mhm.
when customers call, they don't know your jargon,
Right,
and they may not say things in the same way that you've been saying them all the time. So that
right,
that that could be a barrier of understanding in the communication when you're speaking with the customer, is not understanding what you have to break it down, peel away the layers of the onion, like what are they really saying, because what they're
right.
saying doesn't match what I know. But this
Mhm.
approach that you've just explained with the repetition and coming at it 3 or 4 different different ways really sets up the agent for success, because now they know that they trains them to be open-minded
Right.
when somebody
Yes.
brings something in, and it's the same issue, but it's just presented in a different way.
Exactly. Yes. And for us, we have found it when we implemented that strategy, our agents became even more successful and better at dealing with client issues.
That's an important, I think we need to highlight in the description of this podcast.
Excellent.
All of your agents, when they come in, real quick, do they have to be HIPAA certified prior to applying, or is that something that you help them get, or does it just umbrella under the company?
It's an umbrella under the company, so it's not required for
Hmm.
our individual agents to have any extra certifications in good clinical research practices or HIPAA. But of course, it is something that's spelled out in our SOPs that each agent is signing off on.
Okay, moving on. So, Bettina, can you tell us what are some of the common pitfalls that you've encountered, either with scaling your own team, or maybe you've seen it in other businesses? Because I know, you know, those of us that have been in the support game, it's just kind of like being a cook. When you go into a restaurant, you begin to critique right away. So when you're dealing, with other support for other businesses, you know what's going on in the background, and so you begin to critique it. So what are some of the common pitfalls that you've encountered or seen others encounter when scaling support teams?
Well, let me just first say what you said is exactly correct. I think that might be a downside to working in support because as soon as I contact support or, if I'm in person dealing with support, like I'm immediately giving them like a grade on how great, how well I think their
Right.
support is. But one of the things I think I noticed that is a pitfall for many support teams is they don't appreciate the team. That's the biggest thing that I feel like is a problem with support. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about support teams often being treated as the bottom of the totem pole, right?
Mhm.
So they don't feel like real part of the company, right? They feel like this, it's just this ancillary role that they're just doing as if it's not important, and it is, right? Like your support team represents the company every single day, like maybe more so than any other department. They are constantly interacting with clients every single day. So it's one of those things like there are full call centers of support teams that you have people there that like they dread, like the majority of the call center will dread coming to work every day. And that energy that your support team carries, that is being passed on to clients. Like, and do you
Right.
want that as your representation? So my big thing is don't fall into that. Don't fall into that pit of having a support team where the majority of people there, if not all of them, don't feel valued. They don't feel as they are truly a part of the company, and they don't feel like their role is important.
Right. And it's like what people that are who are not on the phones or in the chats or, dealing with the customers don't really understand is on one end, they're getting crap from the customers sometimes, and then they turn around and get crap from the people that they work with. So
Yes, exactly.
it's a horrible situation, to be in because I think that not only, you're absolutely correct, that your support team is that the front line. They're not calling the CEO. They're not calling product or dev. They're calling the support agents. They're calling the people that are picking up the phones. But at the same time, they're also the voice of the customer to the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the company,
Right.
because they've got to turn around and give the feedback that the rest of the company may not want to hear. You know what I'm saying? Like, if something, one of the product or something with the something breaks or whatever, they have to give that feedback, over to the other teams. So that's why it is important, to have that relationship. And I like what you said. Yes, let's give a little respect, for the frontliners because they do take a lot.
Yes, they do. And they know a lot. Like you would be surprised if someone really sat down to speak with an agent who has been with the company, who absolutely loves what they're doing. They love the company they work for. And if you speak to them, the knowledge that you could possibly gain, not just on customer insights on how customers feel, but about the product itself. A lot of times
Mhm.
they are like true people who just they know they are experts in it, and to not value their opinion and thoughts when they really are the true experts is boggles the mind. It's crazy. You should take everything they say and really consider it because they know a lot more than people give them credit for.
That's funny. That reminded me of a story. We have one client who's an e-commerce has an e-commerce store that sells shoes and bags. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to him in a call. This is a few months ago, and he called out one of the agents and to give the agent a shout out. I said, she is amazing. And I said, what happened? He's like, he was going through some of the support cases, and he said one of the customers asked her a question about a pair of shoes, right? And she knew
Mm-hmm.
the answer, and he's like, I didn't even know the answer. He's like, I had to actually go to the product page and
Mm-hmm.
find the pair of shoes, and it's like in like little tiny, you know, letters at the bottom, out of some of the description. And he's like, and it's like she knew it right away, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So you're absolutely right. The amount of questions that that they get that the support team gets asked in a day. especially if you're building out knowledge bases and stuff like that, a lot of times they're just like, they could be just one-off questions. You may not get at that same question again for the next year.
Right.
But especially if the agent has to turn around and do research on it, you know what I mean? And now they know, then they, yeah, you're right. Then they're carrying around a whole lot of knowledge.
A whole
So
wealth of knowledge that often goes unappreciated.
exactly. So how do
Not in
you
Creole, though. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. How do you balance the need for scalability with maintaining a personal customer focused support experience? Because I did notice on your LinkedIn that is one of your focuses is,
Yes.
very customer centric. Again, how do you balance the need for the scalability and still maintaining that customer centric focus?
So the thing is, like, the landscape for scalability has changed a lot over the past 10 years, right? The number of options that support departments can adopt, right, into their department, it allows clients to get support and answers that they may need without obviously hiring all the time, right? Because there are new options that allow them to self-service. So you have like automation tools like chatbots that you can add. You can create a customer facing wiki that, has AI built into it with search functionality. So that way the answers the customers get are more accurate. Like, and these are layers that you can add on top of support to scale out your entire department without hiring more people. And it can help to really insulate your team, right? So that way they do have more time to have those personal conversations and troubleshoot issues live with clients. The important part really is making sure, though, that you still have that option, right? That's the most important thing. No matter what you implement, making sure you still have that option for clients to reach out to support without making it a hurdle to jump through. I don't know if you
Right.
notice, like sometimes now it feels like actually being able to contact support is a hurdle. Like you have to
Yes.
search and dig for it. So you want to find that balance where you have these additional options, but people can still easily contact you. And then also to having a great team, having a great knowledgeable team that's there to support those clients and build the rapport with them. Like for our team, we don't have a script. We have absolutely no script. We have no intentions of ever adding a script. And for me, for my agents, I tell them I want them to feel free to bring their personality to each and every chat. That goes into hiring, right? Making sure you're hiring the right people. So that way they can bring a winning personality. It's hard to bring a personality to an interaction from a script, right?
Yes.
But that
Yes.
also goes hand in hand with making sure that you're thoroughly training people, right? Because if you're thoroughly training people, then and like they're properly trained, they know the product inside and out, then that lessens the need to even have a script, right? Because then now they're free to just share their wealth of knowledge in a way where they can bring themselves to the interaction. And that's how you truly build rapport that builds relationships. So that's just something that keep in mind no matter what you do and how you scale the operation.
Knowledge is everything
It
because
is.
from knowledge comes the confidence.
Right.
I remember when I first started doing this 7 years ago,
Mhm.
doing the sales for a BPO company. I've never done that before, ever. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I didn't know. I mean, I was so, just like you said, when support agents, that phone rings, I mean, they're going to work, they're dreading going to work, and that phone
Right.
rings, and they cringe, like, oh my God, I hope I think about myself back then. I was like, to get into a sales call, I was so nervous. And now I'll hop on a call with anybody, anytime, anywhere. You know what I mean? I,
Mhm.
I I was in the line at the grocery store doing a sales call, because the guy, he called me on WhatsApp. So I'm like, hey, if you don't mind, I'm in the grocery store. He's like, no, and we just did the sales call right there, or the,
Right.
the discovery call, so having that knowledge, like you said, we and we keep going back to and that is a heavy topic, is the training. You're absolutely right. So having those agents that are trained and knowledgeable, and the continuous education, obviously the continuous training, the continuous knowledge, gives them the
Yes.
confidence to hop into those chats or those calls or whatever, and
Mhm.
not have to sit there and think in the back of their mind, oh, the queue is piling up or something like that,
Right.
so that they're going to try to rush through, but they're going to be able to give accurate responses quickly,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know. So
exactly.
so you had mentioned, and we just talked about the chat bots and the how-to articles and everything else. So and scaling the support team. Can you expand a little bit about what you were saying about what role does the automation play, and
Right.
how do you decide which processes to automate?
So like we live in a digital age, right? That's fast becoming the age of AI, right? Internet of Things, all of those wonderful things.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to like support, I think one of the biggest things, and this actually ties into what I was previously saying, is finding that balance, right? Making sure that you have clients or making sure that you have information readily available that clients can easily access, while also making sure that you're finding ways to build those client relationships. So it's the balance, fast answers, building relationships in support. Because like it's funny because clients like instant gratification. That's a thing now, right?
It is,
But at the
yes.
same time, just as quickly as clients have want answers, at the same time, they could take offense if like human interaction is completely missing from everything. Like they'll get upset. That's why you have like people like rage yelling at bots because they just want an agent, right? So it's finding that balance. So
Guilty.
so like for us really, I would recommend anyone, any support department that's like just getting into automation, start with repetitive tasks. I wouldn't even, I know chatbots and things like that they're like all the rage now, but if you're just getting into it, I would recommend just starting simple with repetitive tasks, things that can free up time for your agents to be able to provide support. That would be like, that is a huge part of really scaling out the team because now you're making them more efficient, right? And that's just as important as those chat bots that's getting them the fast answers, right? So you would start there.
Can you give us an example of like a repetitive task that you would want to automate?
Sure. So different things. Okay, for example, for us, we have different metrics that we need to keep track of, right? And the way that we keep track of those numbers is through labeling. For our agents, of course, you want to tell them, hey, can you make sure that you're using the correct labeling? But again, sometimes things get busy, right? They might forget. There's a chance that they might forget to categorize or label these specific interactions. So you set up automation to do it for you. Like if its system catches these keywords, make sure to automatically label, like things like that that makes the team more efficient, setting up like automated emails to send out
Mhm.
or automated reminders like for the agents if they need to follow up with something, setting up those automated reminders so that they don't have to remember on their own because they're notified. Again, they might remember, they possibly could remember, but they're not going to remember all the time, and especially if things get busy. So really your focus should for automation initially should be things that make the team more efficient.
Yeah, I'm going back to your article, talked about having a really good here we are, the integration of technology, and a modern customer support department should leverage cutting edge tools such as customer relationship management, CRM systems, ticketing systems, and chatbots. And these technologies not only streamline processes but also enhance the overall customer experience. So that's just right in line with what you were talking about. You can get a good CRM that can automate a lot of, like you said, like follow-up emails can get overlooked, especially with the support agents that busy. I don't know how Creo is, but I know a lot of businesses like to, after the resolution, after 3-4 days, they like to send out an email follow up just to say is everything still okay,
Right.
and those can get overlooked, but yet it may seem like a small gesture, but really it's not,
It's not.
and yeah, and when you're busy, those kind of things can get overlooked. So, automating just one of those processes right there can free up the agent's time, but also the customer is still getting, um, that personal touch.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is huge for them, right? Like they might not even respond to automated email that's asking them how their interaction went, but it's a lot of times it's like a gift. It's the thought that counts, right? So are you thinking of these things so that way they can remember, hey, this company is there, and then it looks like, hey, this company actually cares.
And that goes back to another thing you said, how difficult it is sometimes to get a hold of support. I've been there, where it's like you're all over the page. Like, how can they give you the address, of the company? It's like, what, should I go there? I mean, you're all the way over on the other side of the world, you know, and then, right. So then you get on and it's, I'm 52 years old, right? So I'm Gen
Mhm.
X. So, and then another point you made is, the instant gratification. Even myself at my age, coming out of the 90s when we didn't have everything at our fingertips in an instant.
Right.
When
Mhm.
we would take pictures and you had to take the thing down to the drugstore and wait a week,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
and you don't even know
And
if
get
they
them
turned
developed.
out, right?
Right.
Exactly. You know, so you would think that people my age are more patient, but they're not. They're less
They're not.
patient because even myself, I have been trained by technology that I
Mhm.
can have everything I need in an instant.
Yes.
If I want to watch a movie, I just pop on Netflix,
Right.
whereas
Yep.
before I had to get in the car, go down to Blockbuster, you know,
Exactly.
you know, that being said, and it's not going to go away. And things are just getting
No.
faster and faster and faster. So they are
Yep.
expecting those faster replies. And that's where
Mhm.
chatbots do come in to play with those. How do I reset my password?
Right.
How can I can't access this, or where do I can get my account information? Things like that. So again, that takes the pressure off of the support agents. So as you're scaling, you can see that you may not again need to throw as many people into the queue as before, but if
Right.
you're scaling and you're integrating certain technologies as well,
Mhm.
then that's just going to streamline things. And then you can train your agents with more knowledge to handle more complex things. And
Exactly.
again, not to be sitting there while they're in the call thinking about how many tickets are in the queue, you know, and how are we going to get through
Mhm.
all of this. They need to have that relaxed aura, I guess I should say, when they're with
Yes.
the customer to make sure that they're focused directly on the issue at hand.
And the more tools that you give them to make them more efficient, the more relaxed they will be when it comes time for those interactions, right? So that's why you want to make sure you're not just tackling this from one angle. You want to cover all areas of their work, right? Not, and I think that is actually a problem that people, it's a trap that people get caught in. They're like, okay, well, if we just add this chat bot and expect it to handle 90% of our interactions, we're fine. No, you're not. Let's make the team overall in every aspect of their role more efficient. And that's where you can say, okay, we have a scaling plan that's going to be successful and benefit the department as a whole, and then also prevent clients from lashing out and getting mad because you're going to make sure you're still providing them the support that they need no matter how they're getting it.
Right. And I've seen, chatbots, you can buy them like out of the box, right? And a lot of them are not customizable. Is that a
Right.
word? Customizable? Right.
It
You
is.
you can't customize it to fit into, you know, certain support things, company support
Scenarios, yeah.
areas. So, it's not relevant. And it just ends up
Mhm.
creating more frustration. And then until
Yep.
finally they speak to a live agent. So now they've gone, all the way around the world and back to end up being just more frustrated and more angry. And then the agent has to take that. So I think that if, you're going to step into the world of chatbots or the world of automations, that's great. But just as you would put a lot of, emphasis on hiring the correct support agents, I would say do
Yes.
the research and invest into a good chatbot that's relevant, or have one built even. I don't know how much that
Mhm.
costs, but have that customized to your specific business,
Yeah.
so that it answers, the questions that need to be answered and enhances the customer journey instead of degrading the customer journey along the way.
Exactly. And yeah, that's the main problem with automation. That's the route many of them are taking, and it's really lowering the overall customer experience and making people even more frustrated. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking the time to research what really will be a benefit for your organization.
I used to be, I mean, to a degree, I'm still kind of anti-chatbot. Just because when I, and I really shouldn't say that because I know a lot of support directors swear by them.
Hmm.
But I have backpedaled a lot since, and I think I mentioned this almost every podcast episode. My age, it's very, very common to forget passwords. you
Hmm.
know, so if they don't have a password reset and you have to like get a hold of support to like get logged in, just having that simple process through a chatbot. Hey, just click here, do this. Okay, that's great. You know,
Right. Yeah.
stuff that doesn't require essentially a conversation, that is
Hmm.
just throw a set of instructions at me and I'll do it myself here, at 2 o'clock in the morning, so that,
Right.
nobody knows. Now, circling back to, you mentioned about, the tools and, setting up the agents with the tools to keep them confident. But there are other challenges, when you're scaling up, and it could be, like we said, if it so happens that you get into that situation where you may need to hire retroactively, or there's just like a boom, a rapid growth. So how do you handle the challenge of maintaining the team morale and engagement during those periods where it's just booming?
So I have to say, this might be another example where my thinking might be different, right? Than a
We
lot
love
of
different.
people. So for one, when it comes to team morale, it starts with the hiring process. Starts there. Hiring specific types of people that you feel will fit in, because if they automatically have that like as a part of their personality, high morale, self-motivating, then it's going to be easier to maintain that over the long run, right? People who are just excited about the opportunity and just about life overall, it's going to be easier to maintain that morale. That's one thing. But then the next part of it is that I feel like it's wrong to just say, okay, there's a situation, let's build morale. I think that's a wrong way of thinking, completely wrong. In my mind, no matter what is going on, you should be working on morale, no matter what. If you only concentrate on keeping morale high at specific times, you're failing or you're going to fail. So, just again, this is support. Like, these people are interacting with customers, representing your company every single day. So, that means, in my mind, every single day, as a department leader, right, you should be making sure that you're maintaining team morale every single day.
I love that.
And if you're doing that every single day, then you won't have to worry so much about doing it when a challenge presents itself.
Again, doing it retroactively.
Exactly.
Right. And I think, our CEO, Marge, would agree with you 100%, because that is a lot of her philosophy as well.
Yeah.
Not waiting until what hits the fan, or until people are starting to complain or whatever, to take action. It should
Right.
be, team morale, company morale should be ongoing all of the time. And
All the time.
I also like what you said, circling back to hiring the right people, because if you don't have the right if a person is just pessimistic and negative, you could have
Hmm.
all of the, team building events, you could have everything that you want, but if they're not going to engage, then it's all for naught. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yep.
They're not going to be. They have that thing that was popular a couple years ago called the quiet quitting, right? Where,
Hmm.
and I actually, I mean, I got into discussions with people about that. They're like, well, I'm just here for a paycheck. What's wrong with that? You know what?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. But, when you have somebody like that, okay, maybe you can't force everybody to engage in activities and be happy all the time, but you also don't have to bring everybody down all the time too.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's day. I mean, we're all human, and there's days when people walk in and to work and they're just not feeling it.
Right.
Like it's like, hey, good morning. Yeah, go to hell. You know,
Exactly.
we're all human, but when there's not a good balance of that, then
Hmm.
yeah, you definitely. So starting, with the hiring process, and then I wouldn't say holding them accountable, but in a way, holding each individual accountable as well for their own morale.
Right.
You know,
But in order to do that, you have to be providing in an environment that allows them to do so.
good point. Excellent point. You're absolutely right. Well, I was just thinking back to I was a big fan or follower of Dr. Wayne Dyer, and
Hmm.
he would always, I don't know if you ever heard about him. He was a speaker and an author, and the reason why I don't say motivational speaker is because he didn't like being referred to as a motivational speaker. He's like, I can't motivate anybody.
Right.
People have to motivate themselves. I
Yes.
just, give them ideas on how to do it,
Hmm. Hmm.
So in a way, that's the same thing. You're providing the environment, but you still have to hold people accountable, to a degree, because if it's a toxic environment, again, it's the opposite side of the coin. If
Right.
it's toxic and things are busy and you're scaling up and you know what I mean, and then no amount of happiness and joy it can overcome that,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, they again is just a part of that hiring is looking for people that have that within themselves, that they can have more positive days, right? Than negative ones. So of course you're not going to be 100% when selecting these people, but you want that to be a goal when it comes to hiring.
I love that. So I wanna circle way back, and we're getting low on time, but I really want to get your thoughts on this, because if we go back to the beginning when you said, you when you first came on with Creo, you were tasked with building out the support team.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, how did you adapt your support team structure and processes as the customer demands increased and diversify? And by that I mean,
Oh.
obviously, over periods of time, just like going, being learned that everything needs to be faster and everything else. Customer
Hmm.
demands, they become more educated, they become, just different. So how do you adapt to that?
So, like, well, as you grow, of course, it's going to become extremely important to build out and update like processes for your department, right? That's just a given. For me, this is something that I feel like it's best done with my team in mind first and foremost. And I know a lot of people are going to probably say, "Oh my goodness, don't say that," right? Because of course you have to it's support. You have to think of the client or it's a company period. So you have to think of the client that you're servicing and you have to think about the company as a whole, right? Especially the higher up on the ladder that you get, like the company's goals become your foundation for your goals for your department. But for me, I really do try to find that balance where I am keeping my team in mind and trying to satisfy as many as possible. And when I say as many as possible, I'm speaking of clients, the company, and my team. And that sounds complicated, of course, right? Because
It does, yes.
how do you keep everybody happy? Of course, that's going to be impossible to do all the time, right? But for me, like I try to find a position that will, if not satisfy all three, satisfy as many as possible of the three. And I spend a lot of time considering everyone and how they will be affected and what parts of this can really be of benefit to everyone involved, right? Because I want my team, like one thing my team will tell you if we're in a meeting, like they'll always say, "Oh, Bettina, thank you for having our backs," because they know, like, first and foremost, I'm going to go to bat for them and I'm going to have their back. So I'm not if it's something that the company or client wants that really could hinder or hurt my team, I'm going to speak about that because like their well-being is super important to me. That's why they enjoy being in this role, right? Because they know that somebody's going to be there for them and is going to provide them resources, tools, and just really want them to do well, right? They know this. So for that, anything that we implement, it considers those things first. And I think a lot of times with companies, they take that part out of it. And that's the problem when it comes to like the team itself being able to adapt to change, because the team and how it really will benefit them has been taken out of the consideration. So that's another thing. Like I try not to do. I always try to consider them and make sure that whatever we're moving forward with is of their benefit.
Bettina, it sounds like you have a lot of passion for what you do.
I do, and I love, love, love my team.
So we
They are
are
amazing.
so we are out of time. We're at the end here. Do
Uh-huh.
you have any last words of advice for any support leaders that may be, looking to scale up, thinking about scaling up, or might be frustrated, or having some issues? Any kind of advice that you want to give out from your experiences?
I would say one, definitely go back to your training, and if you need to scrap it and completely redo it, do that. That's perfectly okay because we've talked about it. We brought it up multiple times. Like your training really does set your foundation for the team. That would be the first thing. Secondly, when it comes to your team, make sure that you keep them in mind and treat them as the important team members they are. Because if you do that with them, they will reward you with excellent customer service for your clients, right? So just make sure you're remembering your team. And another thing I try to cultivate a team of leadership as well. So I give them the opportunity to be leaders in their own right, to make different decisions, make a call on things, to get things done. Even when you do that, again, they reward you back with excellent work when it comes to your clients. So I would say those are three things for any new like person in the field or somebody building out a team that you want to do. And all of that as well starts with hiring the right people as well. So please don't rush to fill a seat. Make sure you're looking at your company, looking at your company culture, look at where your company is going, and hire based off of that. Never hire just because you need somebody there to provide support.
Excellent advice. Bettina, thank you so much for being here. It has been a pleasure. You have given us a lot of valuable insights and a lot of great takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Telecast PH. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Jeff Thompson, and if you're ready to explore what offshore outsourcing can do for you with a remote team or a virtual assistant for your business, check us out at www.teleworkph.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And until then, may the force be with you.